Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Whatever the I Want podcast, where I, your host, Gaby, get to talk about whatever the I want. Today's episode is an episode for my younger self. So, it is colder than I expected for it to be. It was basically raining on and off all day. It's now in the 50s, and I was going to film inside, and basically things weren't working out. So I was like, okay, let's just take this party outside because now it's not raining. We were kind of like in between I guess, like the pouring rain. So I wrote a letter to my younger self, and I'm going to read it to you. I wrote this April 23rd, 2025, 7:02 p.m. A letter to my younger self. The world didn't end when you stopped growing in the 5th grade. The world didn't end when you and your first boyfriend broke up. In fact, the world didn't end after any breakup you've ever had, no matter how much it felt like it would. The world didn't end when you picked up any new hobbies or decided to pick old ones back up. The world didn't end when you decided to cut off some people as friends. The world didn't end, and yes, your broken heart did mend. Every lesson you've ever had would repeat itself in different ways or with new people until you finally decided things had to be different. Things had to change. You had to be different. No more arguing just to be right. No more arguing just to pick a fight. The world didn't end when you decided to move to a different state. The world didn't end when you told the world you weren't straight. The world didn't end, and sure, it did feel like your world was crumbling down, but it's only taught you to get back up and fight for your crown. For in this life, there are only victories, a chance for you to see all the potential you could live up to be. For there are crowns, jewels, riches aplenty, but the greatest gift life can give you is the people you journey it with. So hold your friends close, your family even closer, but most of all, hold on to yourself and to your dreams. Because at the end of the day, the only person who lived every waking moment with you is you. So love yourself more, cut yourself some slack, but most of all, have your own back. Stand up for what you believe in. Pick yourself up whenever you fall, because if you don't, did it even matter at all? Energy goes where attention flows, so pour into yourself and watch yourself grow. Don't give up, never quit, because my dearest Gaby, you are it. And I wrote this, and I had the idea of having an episode written to my younger self, and I think we oftentimes neglect our inner child when our inner child is just a part of us. There's still the 2-year-old Gaby within me that needs to throw tantrums. There's the 8-year-old Gaby in me who's still extremely curious about things. There's the 12-year-old Gaby who's still trying to figure herself out. There's the 21-year-old Gaby still trying to figure out her way with alcohol. There's all these different versions of me that still exist within me, and that is why it's important to give yourself grace, because sure, like I said, like a lesson repeats itself, and it does. And I think that's one thing that I've noticed throughout life is that like lessons will continue repeating themselves, but that's because at that point in time, they're not lessons. They're just experiences that are happening to you. So that's why once you finally figure out like, oh, that's why I keep getting into toxic relationships. That's why I keep working jobs that I hate, or that's why I keep experiencing XYZ, is because I need to learn my lesson behind this. And so for me, some of those lessons have been, Gaby, you need to pour into yourself first. Gaby, you cannot work for other people because you feel like your soul is being sucked out of your body whenever you do. And so I think that a lot of lessons that have happened in my life have brought me to where I am today. And that's why it's important to acknowledge those parts of you that still exist, those parts of you that are still, sad or triggered whenever somebody raises their voice at you. That's something that happens to me. I don't like when people raise their voice at me. I also hate doors being slammed. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. It triggers something in me. And so I think we need to spend time learning ourselves, because, we spend so much time listening to the people around us, hearing their stories, hearing what they're experiencing and what they're going through. And it's a way for us to neglect how we feel about ourselves, what experiences we're having. It's so easy to deflect, right? Like, you could be at a party and people are like, hey, like, how are you, right? Simple question, happens all the time. Good, how about you? What's going on in your life? What's happening? What's new, right? It's really easy to just be like, no, let's not talk about me, let's talk about you. And I think if you have people in your life that give you the space to talk about yourself and what you're experiencing and what you're going through, fall into that, listen to it. It's like, you should have friends and family members or people in your life that you feel like you can lean on and that are reliable. And that's why quality over quantity is so important, because, I was on the phone with my parents yesterday and they're like, Gabby, you have really good friends. And I truthfully do. I have a solid, maybe like, let's say 7. Let's say a solid like 7 friends that I could like call up. I know that they'd answer. And maybe it's even less than that, or we're including family into that 7, because I know that I have family members who, as well as friends, that I could call, or I know that I could lean on, despite me not talking to them all the time. There's very few people in my life that I talk to on a daily basis, and it's only like very few friends that I talk to on a daily basis, especially family members, because, everybody's lives are busy. But I have those friends that I can, that I haven't seen in years, that I know that if I were to text and say like, hey, I need to talk, they would be a listening ear. But back in the day, I'm an oversharer. That's what this podcast is. It's me oversharing. Like, I know that that's a part of my identity. It's a part of who I am. So that's why, like, I've tried taking a step back of sharing everything about my life. But I guess it's still a piece that I kind of struggle with, because I like to share. And it's also about knowing, like, for safety reasons, like maybe you shouldn't share everything about your life. But there's a big part of me that's like, but that's just who I am. Obviously, like, I post if I'm at a restaurant or something, like hours later, days later, trips. I mean, at this point, like now years later, because I still haven't posted being in Colombia, being in DF, like I haven't posted a lot of that stuff. And some of it is like for safety, but some of it I think is just like me getting in my head. And I know that that's something that I do a lot too, is I get in my head. And so in The Artist's Way, they talk about how you have this sensor, right? It's this logical side that comes out and basically tells you all the logical reasons why you shouldn't do something. So I was giving my mom the example yesterday, like say you want to go out to eat, right? You have this ding, like, oh, let's go out to eat, this idea. And then, you start coming up with options like, okay, well, let's go get Chipotle, let's go get Cane's, let's go get this, let's go get that. And then, in your heart, you're like, I really want Cane's. I really want to go to Cane's. I really want their chicken tenders. And then, like, that's your epiphany, right, that you have. But then, a couple minutes later, you're like, but, I really have, like, I have food thought out. I really should cook. I just don't think it's in the cards for me today. And so you kind of like talk yourself out of doing these things. And it's not just about food. It could be going to try a new experience, like going to an escape room. It could be going to a new museum. It could be literally doing absolutely anything. But then your brain comes in with this logical side of like, no, because it wants to keep you safe. And it just sees like, you going to a trampoline park as like an inconvenience, right? That's for me what things show up as. It's an inconvenience. It's a drive. Why are you going to want to go do that? Versus like, I know that if I were to suck up, because to me, 20, 30 minutes driving can be like, oh, man, I'm driving far. Which is crazy because you grow up in Florida and you're like, 20, 30 minutes, girl, that's just you driving to your mom's house. But for me, now that you live up north, like I live up north, you realize I could drive 2 hours and I'm in this state, that state, another state, but in Florida, you drive 2 hours just to Florida. So I think now I have this, that northerner of like, that's just far. So I think we need to be challenging ourselves more, trying new things, trying new foods, trying new experiences, and pushing ourselves to level up, because we become so stagnant and so comfortable with where we're at that we forget how good and exciting things are whenever they're fresh and new. That's why, like, whenever you go visit a new city, a new state, you're like, oh, wow, like your mind opens up to all of the possibilities. Like, what if I lived here? Or like, oh, if I lived here, I would come to this cafe every single day, or this is where I would work from if I worked from here, or like, I think your mind opens up to new possibilities whenever you switch things up. And so I think that that's something that I would tell my younger self a little bit more, like, switch things up, like, stop staying in your comfort zone. And I'm not saying a comfort zone is not nice and cozy. It is, but you don't experience a lot of growth in a comfort zone. Honestly, you probably experience zero to very little growth in a comfort zone. You need to be going out there, pushing yourself, challenging yourself. Like, now I've been drawing things that I have never drawn before, and I look at them and I'm like, oh, they're not great, but it's also my first time doing it. So, my sensor is like, well, this sucks, you're trash, like, why try something new if you're just gonna be bad at it? And it's like, but everybody starts at ground zero. And there was another thing that I saw, basically talking about how, like, trauma is passed on to you from, obviously family members, experiences, things around you. I'm looking at the background, I'm like, so much of the trees, they're still dead, but they're coming back alive. They just waved to the trees. They're waving at us. They're like, bitch, we're here. We might be scrawny, but we're coming around. So that's why it's really important to just really take care of yourselves. My neighbor pulled up, so now I'm like getting shy. So work, school, work, trying new things. It's really important to try new things and to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, because inside your comfort zone, there's not going to be much growth. And that's why, like, it's really important to read different books, listen to different podcasts, expand your mind, because your mind only knows so much to begin with. And if you don't challenge yourself and look around and look to new things or experience new things, then you're not going to be challenged. The nerves. So another reason why I decided to make this episode today was because there's a spiritual person that I follow. Her name's Brittany, and she wrote a letter to her younger self, and that was her post for today. And I'm like, oh, this is my sign. Like, I had written something to my younger self. I've had the idea for a while, so why don't I just share it today? And so that's the reason why I'm here. And I just want to say thank you to my younger self, because if it wasn't the Gaby that existed months ago, I wouldn't have released this podcast. If it wasn't the Gaby who, a year and a half ago experienced a very low point in her life, I wouldn't be the Gaby I am today, going to the gym consistently and, building my dream body, building my dream life. Like, I feel like we're so capable. We're capable of so much more than we think that we are. And a lot of times it's not just us who put these limitations on us, it's the people around us who put those limitations on us. Gaby, you can't do that. Gaby, that's not possible. Gaby, are you sure you want to do that? Gaby, let's think about it. And it's your sensor. So that reminded me, okay, so trauma's passed on to you. Obviously, like, in circumstances, like, say that you saw your parents argue over money. So then now you have this idea of, like, money is difficult to come by. Money is something that it's supposed to be hard. You're supposed to work hard for your money. That's something that, like, I'm getting over, is like, you're supposed to work really hard. Like, that's what I was taught. You got to work hard for your money. And it's like, but you really don't. You really don't got to work hard for money. Like, if you think that, then that's true. That's with anything in life. Anything that you think is true to you, right? So I'm getting over this idea of, like, you got to work hard, like, I mean, and I'm not saying I don't put time and energy into the things that I do. I'm just saying I'm not going to sit here and, lose sleep and cry and feel anxious because I feel like I'm not working hard enough. And that's not the reality of it. There's so many people who just sit there, and, obviously their circumstances are different. Maybe they own multiple properties, maybe, I don't know, maybe they're a sex worker and they have, like, OnlyFans and all this stuff, like multiple streams of income. But that's not to say that money is hard. I'm not saying you don't have to, apply things or act on things. If you have, like, an idea, act on it. These birds, hey y'all, do those things, but don't think that things have to be hard or difficult for you. It's not to say there won't be growing pains. There are growing pains when doing something new. You are you're challenging your brain and your mind and these neural pathways. So like, yes, your brain is like big and scary, but in reality, it's not so big and scary. Once you do something 2-3 times, you're like, oh, I don't know why I was sweating over that. It really wasn't that hard. And so I think that that's what I'm getting at, is like, don't see things as hard or difficult. And that's what I'm telling my younger self now. Like, things are not hard or difficult. They're only hard or difficult if you make them hard or difficult. So I'm really trying to get into this wavelength of just flowing and receiving and just being more present. And I feel like a way that I do that is to like not stress. Like upstairs I had a different lens on the camera, and then the lighting was off, and then I'm just like, and I looked outside the window, I'm like, it's not raining, let me just go outside, and then I'm like, well, the chairs outside are wet, so then I brought out a stool out here, so now I'm sitting out here, and it's like, there's pivot, something's not working, go here, go there, go whatever. And I remember even like when I was working in the news, I would work with people, and they would sit there and like wait for every single line to write. So it'd say that you have a story on like a robbery or something. Okay, a robbery happens, and then I would have coworkers just sit there and be like, for like 10 minutes trying to figure out what their next line of the newscast is going to be, versus me, I'm like, jot every little point that I have down and rewrite it, take stuff out. I like this, I don't like that. Like you got to work through it, versus like just sitting there and just being like waiting for like an idea to hit. So that's why they say write down your bad ideas, quote unquote, because they're not really any bad ideas. Maybe you'll come back and revisit it and be like, oh, I really like this. Example. Now when I have songs or poems or things come into my head, like I write them all down, and it might be like a 2-liner that I have, but it could potentially lead me to finding it again in 6 months from now, and I'm like, oh, it inspires this. And so like, yeah, just take inspired action on literally everything. And I think most of all, I just want to tell my younger self just to be kinder to herself. I remember hearing my mom say, like, I don't know why I was so hard on myself. Speaking for my mom would say, like, I'm so hard on myself, like I didn't like how I looked when I was, 20 or 25. And, she's like, I looked great. I don't know why I was so hard on myself. And I think that that's something that I have also done, is just be really hard on how I am, like, not even just in terms of like physically. I think that that's obviously a part of it, but I think an even bigger part of it is I can be so hard on myself when it comes to my work, when it comes to like things needing to be perfect. And so that's something that I'm overcoming, is just this idea of perfectionism, because perfectionism isn't real. Perfectionism does not exist. And, you can always find, ways to improve. There's always ways to improve or to do something more efficiently. But that's not to say that anything will ever be perfect, because it won't be. And that's okay. That's just a part of life. It's just knowing and understanding things are not going to be perfect, but I tried my best, and that's what matters. So hopefully this episode resonated with somebody. I would love to hear what you want to tell your younger self. Right now, I just randomly thought I saw a bird fly overhead, and in Mexico, not this past January, but the year before that, so 2024, I had a bird poop on my hand. So if you want to go check out that vlog, it's the Cancun vlog on my personal page at YoFabGab. But a bird just flew over my head, and I remember a friend and I having a bird poop on us, and I was like, oh my gosh. First of all, it was so warm. Like, and my brother has had a bird poop on him, and I feel like he's just such a lucky guy. Like honestly, all of my siblings are all very happy, very optimistic, very funny, like people. Like I come from a really good family, but yeah, my oldest brother has had a bird pooped on him, and I was like, and he's like, it's good luck, right? And then it happened to me, and I was like, oh, I was depressed. I was going through like a really hard time in my life. I'm like, fuck, man, I got this bird poop on. I'm just gonna take this as a sign. And now it's kind of like, damn, I feel all the good luck. Like you can feel the goodness around you. You can feel the positivity. Like I see the flowers blooming. I like the other day, people were mowing the lawn, and I'm like, I felt like Hermione. It was like, fresh grass, parchment, like I just feel like there's a lot of good happening. And that's why a lot of people celebrate the new year when it comes to the spring, because that's whenever there's like, a freshness, a fresh start. And that's really what I feel like the spring feels like for me this time around, is just like a fresh start, and you can pick up a new hobby, try something new at any point in time. You don't have to wait for the new year to start going to the gym. And I use that as an example a lot just because it really resonates with me. But You don't need to wait. Stop waiting. The time is now. So to my younger self, to any younger person out there, to anybody who needs to hear it, the time is now. Stop waiting for something to happen, this life-changing moment for you to finally just get up and do what you want to do. Life is so short. You're not promised tomorrow. So get up and do what your heart is calling for you to do. And that in turn will lead you down this path and down these roads where you're meant to go. So stop trying to force things that aren't meant to be, whether it be a relationship, a job, like, I don't know, just whatever you're forcing in life, just stop forcing it and just like go with the flow, like that's all you can do is just vibe. Be like water, okay? I hope that you all have a wonderful day. If you are enjoying the podcast, don't forget to like this video, comment down below. What is something that you want to tell your younger self? What is a piece of advice you would give to your younger self or to any young person out there? I would love to hear it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.